All right, welcome to question 22 of the AAMC preview practice test review. And let us jump into the scenario. All right, scenario 22. You are leading a study group with some classmates when two classmates begin arguing about one of the course topics. The argument is tense but stays on topic until one student insults the other's intelligence. The other student responds by insulting the first student's appearance. All right. Things are getting heated. So, what's the main idea here? What's the main problem that we are trying to confront? Well, it's that while leading a study group, right? We're the group leader. While leading a study group, two classmates start having an argument that becomes personal, right? Very, very straightforward in some ways. And we have seen a similar problem to this. I think it was scenario 17, if I'm not mistaken, where two team members got into a conflict, and it was kind of our responsibility to try to maintain group cohesion, and resolving that conflict was important and was our initial differentiator, right? We were addressing the main problem, but that really meant, are we resolving the conflict? Or at least taking steps to resolve the conflict. But this question is a little bit different, right? We have a little more complexities because, this isn't a group assignment, right? Or it's not for a class. So there's maybe a tiny bit of a less importance on maintaining teamwork. But nonetheless, this is balanced by the fact that we are the group leader in this scenario and, should take action to address the conflict, not only for the sake of the group, but this is, another difference between these two scenarios. This one and 17 is that this is happening in the middle of the study group, right? This argument broke out in the middle of a study group, and right now we are live, confronting this issue. So not only is it important to confront the issue and maintain group cohesion for the sake of the group, because that is a responsibility we have as a group leader, but also we need to think about the other members in the group who are not involved in this fight, right? And how can we make sure that they still get the most out of the study group, right? They're also a stakeholder in this, and also a part of the group that we should consider. So with that said, let's go into 22.1. Ask another classmate to diffuse the argument. All right, so let's ask, where we usually do. And, even in this question, we have some responsibilities that are outlined, right, as a team, as a group leader. So we can also throw in this first question, but really the second question is going to be key, that, are we taking steps to resolve the conflict? Well, we are somewhat, right? We're asking another classmate to do it. But if you do go back to the responsibilities, right, it's kind of on us to mediate this argument because we are the group leader, right? So although we're taking some steps to diffuse the argument, asking another classmate isn't really fulfilling that responsibility that a group leader should have. But we are taking, some steps. So I'm gonna throw this into a 2 or 3. All right. So how do we differentiate between a 2 and a 3? Well, this first problem kind of just jumps out, right? Are you taking personal responsibility for solving the problem? And clearly here we are not, right? This is a very, very clear opportunity to address the fact that we are not the ones taking action to mediate the conflict. And because that is so key to, our duties as a group leader, because we're not fulfilling that, this is going to lead into, a 2 answer, not a 3 answer. But let's just go back and see the other the other questions right here. How are we offering a solution? Well, we already said we're somewhat offering a solution, right? But because we're not taking personal responsibility, we aren't the ones in taking charge. So, but how are we impacting relevant stakeholders? Well, we are, to some degree helping the situation, but we're also burdening this other student we kind of brought in out of nowhere. We're burdening them and, using them to fulfill our responsibilities when we should have. Now, what's the likelihood of causing a problem? I guess we're just putting that burden on the student is somewhat of a likelihood. So it's not too great, right? And that's kind of what led us into differentiating between a 2 and a 3 in the first place, right? The likelihood is not too great. We're not making the situation worse in a very obvious way, but there is some likelihood, and we are clearly not fulfilling our responsibilities as the group leader, right? All those kind of point us towards the ineffective answer. And, it just emphasizes once again that the AAMC really wants you to be the one to offer solutions to problems and really wants you to take charge. All right, 22.2. Let the two classmates handle the situation themselves as you were not involved in the argument. Now this one, I think this one is a little bit tricky, but let's work through our methodology, right? Are you taking steps to address the issue, right? Are you taking steps to address the issue? And this goes kind of hand in hand with fulfilling our responsibilities, but here clearly we are not, right? We're not taking any steps to address this conflict. So, my mind just wants me to put this into a 1 or 2 almost immediately, right? Now, you might be tempted to think you are, completely disengaging from the problem. But I want to let you know that you are not completely disengaging from the problem because, if you think back to our previous questions that we've encountered so far, that is quite a hallmark of a 1 response, of a very ineffective response, that when you do disengage, right? But here, just the wording of the question tells me that we're not completely disengaging, but rather we are making, we're recognizing there's an issue, right? Let's go back to differentiating a 1 or 2. We are recognizing there's an issue, right? We're not ignoring it outright. And we are offering a solution to some degree, right? Our solution, though, is to let the classmates handle that situation themselves. We're using that as our method of overcoming the conflict, of letting them handle the situation by themselves. And it is a personal discussion, so maybe there is some merit to that. But the key here is that we are not disengaging from the problem so overtly. Because we are not doing that, and because we're at least coming to a decision to let the classmates handle it themselves, that's going to push this into a 2 response, an ineffective response. Now, I know this is a very difficult question. I do think that this will make more sense once we get to the final question of the scenario, why this response is not actively disengaging with the problem, but coming to a solution, albeit a poor solution, but coming to a solution nonetheless, and recognizing there's an issue. Trust me for now, and once we get to the last question in this scenario, I think it'll provide a bit more context, make a bit more sense. But that is a rationale on how to get to the ineffective answer for that scenario. That response. All right, so 22.3, tell the 2 classmates you are no longer willing to work with them. All right, so are we addressing the issue, right? Are we addressing the issue? Clearly we are not, right? We are telling the classmates we don't want to work with them after they got into this personal argument. Is there some merit to that? Maybe, but a question I do want to add here, because it will be key in identifying and analyzing this response. We have it in a few different places on our flowchart so far, but let's add it here. How are we impacting relevant stakeholders? Because remember what we talked about in the beginning, we are a group leader, right? So we not only have responsibilities towards mediating this conflict, but we also have other group members who we have a responsibility towards in order to provide them with a functional group session. So by telling the classmates you are no longer willing to work with them, right? It's not like we have a class assignment or a group assignment where we clearly have to work with everyone, right? We are in a study group. Also, by doing this, right, we are disengaging from the problem to some degree, right? We're not addressing that conflict and trying to mediate it. But we are keeping in mind that our other group members will likely benefit if these two classmates are no longer in the study group. Because we are still holding, to and having some positive impact in the scenario and still caring for some of our and then positively impacting some of our other relevant stakeholders besides these two group members, that pushes this answer into a 2 response instead of a 1 response. So it will be ineffective precisely because we are still maintaining some group cohesion, right? Even though we're reducing the group by 2, we are still looking out for our other group members. And to some degree, this could be justified. This, of course, this argument got personal, and maybe that is enough to be okay with letting them go. Nonetheless, we are not mediating that conflict. Ideally, we would come to a solution where we can get past this and have everyone in the group. So that's why it doesn't cross into an effective or very effective threshold, but it does overcome that very ineffective boundary because we are caring for our other group members. All right. That was 22.3, so let's go on to 22.4. Tell the 2 classmates that personal attacks are not acceptable. All right, so are we addressing the issue, right? Are we addressing the conflict, taking steps to try to mediate that conflict? Very clearly we are, right? We're doing it very head on. And if you can see, and this reminds me of our last scenario, right? The scenario 21. If you haven't go watch that video, definitely go watch that video, because we outlined the importance of, getting to the root of the issue, right? Getting to the root cause of the problem. And when someone else makes a mistake or when there is a conflict, what is the best way to overcome that conflict and make sure that person doesn't make a mistake again? Well, it's to get to the heart of the problem and address it from there, right? And this kind of goes into our 4th question here on this list. Are we addressing the root cause of the problem? And very clearly we are, right? It's because we're addressing the personal nature of this argument. And if we do address that personal nature of the argument, we're not just saying stop arguing, right? Which, phrased correctly, could be an effective response. We're going one step beyond that by saying the personal nature of your arguments is not okay. Because we're doing that, we are more likely to improve the situation, right? More likely to prevent similar problems from occurring in the future, right? And it's a bit more of a tangible and an active step when we do drill down into the core of the disagreement. Therefore, this is going to be a 4 response. I think last video we also talked about this quite a bit and expanded on this idea, so please go make sure to watch that video. And if you still have a little bit of difficulty kind of seeing why this will be a 4, but just because of its nature in how well it deals with the core, the root cause of the problem, and the personal nature of the argument, it's more likely to improve the situation, which crosses that threshold of a very effective response. All right. Ask the 2 classmates to resolve their issue privately. All right. Ask the 2 classmates to resolve their issue privately. Are we addressing the main issue? Are we addressing the conflict? Well, we clearly are, right? We're being very direct, very head-on, trying to address and address the conflict. But this is a good example of, us not taking as much of an actionable step in order to mediate the conflict. Because, you got to remember that the difference between let me just go back here. The difference between a 3 and a 4 is how likely it is to improve the situation, right? How likely it is to improve the situation and to what degree it will improve the situation, right? That's the big difference between a 3 and a 4 response. So we know if we take a more actionable step, if we are mediating the conflict ourselves, that's going to be more likely to improve the situation. And the issue with this response here is that we're not taking that actionable step to such a strong degree. We're telling our classmates to resolve their issue privately. because so although we're addressing the issue, this is less likely to mediate that conflict, get over that conflict in the name of having an effective study group, right? And we can look at some other questions, right? Are we being open in conversation? Well, we're not taking as much responsibility and being as open, right? And like I said before, we're just not doing as much as we could to ensure that this conflict is mediated. So although it's going to help, it's going to help the group, right? And hopefully it's going to have these classmates resolve their issue. It's just less likely to do that. Not as likely to do that. As if, as our last question, where we took a very personal approach to resolving the problem and really got in the weeds and explained why, the issue was wrong. All right, 22.6. Tell the study group to take a short break and offer to speak with two classmates privately. Okay, wonderful. This really also is a good contrast to our previous response because, well, let's first ask, are we taking steps to address the issue, right? Making our initial differentiation. We are very clearly taking steps to address the main issue of this conflict. Not only that, is we are telling our study group to take a short break and speaking with the two classmates privately. The good things that are being done here is we're being very open in conversation, right? And we are offering a solution to the main problem to a very high degree because we are taking that time to speak with these two classmates, mediate this conflict, and the probability for this response to overcome that conflict and reinstate this group cohesion is very strong, right? And it's much stronger than our last question. I'm not saying, these questions are relative to each other, but just because it takes that step to hold a private conversation, right? It's respecting our two classmates' boundaries. But not only that, it's of course, we're getting in the weeds, trying to really mediate the conflict. That's why this is going to be a forward response. It's very, very actionable, very tangible. And the chance for it to improve the situation is high. And by improve the situation, we really mean address that conflict. And then reinstate that group cohesion, because that's our duty as a group leader, right? So, all right. 22.7, last question here. Ignore the classmate's argument and continue leading the discussion with the other group members. All right. So, are we taking steps to address the main problem? We are not, right? We are not taking steps to address the argument, the conflict. Very clearly it says we are ignoring the classmate's argument. And you can see here, like I said before, this is a very good contrast to, I think it was 22.2, right? Here we are actively ignoring the classmate's argument. And if you go back, to what extent are you recognizing there's an issue, offering a solution? We are not offering a solution at all. We are very clearly relinquishing our responsibilities. And the consequences is that if we just ignore them and keep on leading the discussion, well, not only will is it likely that the classmates who are arguing, that argument isn't resolved, but if it continues, then we can't lead a discussion with the other group members. It's just going to interfere with the other group members' learning, right? So here we are actively ignoring. We are actively disengaging, which is, a very key question to differentiate a 1 from a 2. We are actively disengaging. Furthermore, very overt consequences. And this is different, right, from 22.2, because in 22.2, here, let's go back to it. We said it was a 2 precisely because, although we are disengaging and not addressing the situation, we are still offering a solution, right? But our solution is just not very good. Our solution was to let the two classmates handle the situation themselves, right? We're not ignoring we're not ignoring the discussion as we just saw in 22.7. That's why this crosses the threshold for being an ineffective response, while 22.7 was very ineffective. All right. That's enough said for this video. Another question down. Please like and comment and subscribe. I know I say that after every every video, but it really helps not only get this channel out to more people, but yeah, I guess that's the main thing that it would help with. So if you could, I would appreciate it. And if you have any more comments or any more questions, just leave them in the comments and I will make sure to answer them. And I will see y'all back for question 23.